but one of the difficulties is it seems like with the rise of feminism and women in the workplace and, all in the name of equality, it seems as though a lot of employers have realized that they could pay people half of the salary that they used to. Like the idea, you know what I mean? Like, because why isn't your wife working? And so the idea that, like, you're applying for a job as a man, it's like I want, we want to have a big family, we want to have multiple kids, we want to homeschool or something like that, and so mom's going to stay home. We can't do two incomes. We need to, our family needs to be provided for off of one income. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of businesses and a lot of places that think in terms of a fair wage for this job is going to be, a one income household. It seems like because of the rise of feminism and the fact that it's been normalized that both men and women should both be in the workplace working, it seems like wages, in some sense, when you think of wages as it relates to cost of living, that they've kind of gone down. And so there's a lot of men that I've spoken with, young men, who they seem exasperated. I think of, like Jesus says, fathers, do not exasperate your children, or fathers, don't provoke your sons to wrath. And I think there's a lot of men who they're exasperated. They feel angry. And I think part of it is because, they look at their parents' generation and they look at what their dad was able to do in providing for their family, and mom was able to stay at home. And it feels as though it is just objectively more difficult. Is that me as a young guy just making excuses, or would you say that from the last 30 years or so, if we think of like the 1990s or even 80s, and then we look at 2021, would you say that men are just more lazy and apathetic? I know there are problems with men. There's sin that we need to repent of, but would you say that maybe circumstantially it actually is a more difficult world for a man to be the single income breadwinner for a home today?
Oh, sure. It's undoubtedly the case. I mean, we have essentially a two-tier economy today, whereas if you're part of the knowledge economy class of, say, the top 20% most educated, highly compensated workers, you're probably doing okay. You're maybe even doing great. But if you're someone who, say, doesn't have a college degree, which is, well over half the population. I mean, like, 2/3 of the population. And that's not just because we have a lot of old people who didn't go to college. Even younger people, fewer than half of millennials are going to college, getting a degree. Then you're in a situation where you're in a much more, income constrained environment, because a lot of those old, well-paid, kind of blue collar jobs, let's say old union jobs in the Ford plant, those jobs don't exist anymore. They may exist for the people who still have them because they got them a long time ago. But even if you got a job at the Ford plant today, you're on a two-tier wage scale where younger workers are getting paid much, much, much less than the previous workers did. A lot of the benefits like pensions are not there like they used to be. So, yeah, so since the 70s, essentially incomes, real incomes, that is to say adjusted for inflation, in the country have kind of stagnated. There's, a lot of things started going wrong in 1970, and there's a lot of debates about why that may be. But definitely the idea that companies, no longer have this idea of a family wage, might be one of them. Even the unions wanted to bargain for a family wage so that you could support a family on one income. And now the unions are weaker, and we have corporations that are essentially committed to driving down labor costs. You should, in a lot of ways, you could consider yourself fortunate if you have a job that pays low wages rather than your job having been shipped off to, India, right, Mexico, China, someplace like that. I worked in the IT consulting industry, and the company I worked for went from like less than 1,000 employees in India in 2000 to now I think they have over 200,000 employees in India. And so you start looking at that, certainly the, corporations today have, since the 80s probably have become much more ruthless in driving down costs. And again, it's complicated. I don't want to say that it's too facile to say it's feminism's fault. There's a lot of things going on there, but it's certainly the case that it's a lot harder to support a family on one income today than it used to be. There's an
Mhm.
outfit called American Compass run by a guy named Orrin Cass, a former colleague of mine. And they've published research on this on like, here's what a one income in America will buy today versus what it used to buy back in the day. And that has become something that they're trying to resurrect, that sort of analysis. Can you actually support a family on this income? And in many
Mm,
cases, the answer is just flat out no. On the
mm.
other hand, I think, we can complain about the world, but we also have to live in it. And I
Right.
think a lot of us in today, we have become a very consumer driven society, and we probably do spend way too much money.
Mhm.
In general, I know
Right.
I spend too much money. I spend a lot less money than I used to.
Mm,
And I have a wife who stays home with our son right now. But if I
mm.
hadn't made those painful reductions in my
Yeah.
lifestyle and in my spending over the course of close to a decade, I would never
Right.
have been able to do that. So we just have to, our parents' generation, when they were raising kids, were not drinking Starbucks lattes. I can tell you that. They weren't
That's
drinking
true.
microbrew beers. They weren't having,
Mm.
the proverbial avocado toast. We hardly
Right.
ever went out to eat when I was a kid. When we were
Right.
getting like, my mom got whatever brand of soda was on sale that week. That's what we
Right.
got. And so, it wasn't like,
Right.
I had a great childhood, but it wasn't like when you think back about it, it's like, man, in the 1970s and 80s, when I was growing up, family
Mhm.
life was spending in the homes were much more simple, much
Right.
more primitive. And I think we have to start thinking about how we take cost out of our lives, because that's the other thing we can do.
Mm.
Our incomes are probably not going to go up. That's not going to be that's a hard thing to adjust,
Right.
but we can look at taking costs out, because I do think we want to create margin for taking risks
Mm.
for ministry, create margin for, having your wife stay home with the kids, create
Right.
margin for lots of things. And so I think that's where I would sort of be looking at it today.
Thanks for watching this video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, we hope that you'll take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can watch more content like this. Also, take a moment and give this video a like so that it can reach more people. And take a moment and click on the bell so that you'll be notified whenever we come out with new content. Thanks so much. God bless.